Hi all, welcome. Just want to continue with what we were looking at last time when with the parable of the owner of the vineyard in Luke chapter 20 verses 9 to 18. You can also find it in Mark 12. And again, I just wanted to give a little bit of background to this, and I'll probably split this into two halves. Just the background this time, a bit more background, and then we'll look at the actual parable next time. But I think you'll find that it all merges together anyway. But very important that we understand how this comes in and see again, like last time we looked, didn't we, at how the background is very much in the Old Testament. There is the story in Isaiah chapter 5 where God talks through Isaiah about the nation of Israel, and he talks about it being like a vineyard, and he says that how they have not followed him, and the vineyard had everything that it needed. But actually, when he came and looked, the grapes were so poor, the fruit was so poor, the fruit of the nation was so bad that they were going to be taken into captivity, and of course they were. And of course, Jesus takes this story and he brings it up to date. And again, it's still a parable of judgment. The judgment here seems to be against the leaders of the nation, against the Jewish leaders. And they get the message that actually he's talking about them, as you'll see at the end, not a hidden message at all. And a lot of people would have understood the Old Testament reference as well to the Isaiah one. And of course, the boys particularly, because they were the ones that went to the synagogues and were trained in the Torah and so on. They would have got some of the references there as well, and they would have picked things up that others might have missed. But a lot of people would have understood what Jesus was getting at, and particularly, of course, the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, the scribes, and so on. So, it's about the story in the context of a returning king coming back in judgment, because actually that's what happens. Jesus, if you look at the setting in Luke 19, and this is what I want you to do, Jesus is actually coming back in as a returning king. He's come into Jerusalem. He comes down on a donkey into Jerusalem. He's there. The excitement is incredible. They are laying their clothes, their prayer shawls probably it is, or their cloaks on the floor. The donkey with Jesus on is riding over. They are shouting and singing, and everything is kicking off, as you might say. You can't miss what is happening. The Messiah that they've long awaited for so long is coming back. This is the Messiah. A lot of people believe it, and perhaps they believe he's coming in to rescue them from the Romans and set them free from their oppression. And I want you to imagine what it would be like for those in authority watching this sort of thing. If we had this sort of thing today, I can remember Elizabeth and I went to up to London to see our son recently, and we drove past this building on the way in, and it was quite strange. We just commented about the architecture on the outside, a modern building, but along the front there was all these police vans full up with policemen and so on, and we commented on that as well. And I wonder what that's all about then. What are they doing there? And it wasn't until later on that when we got home and we saw the news in the evening, of course, there was a massive demonstration going on, and that was the American embassy. They've moved it from where it was before, last time we've been there, and this was a new embassy, and we had no idea. And of course, we were so relieved that we missed what went on, because there on the news were thousands of people all demonstrating, and I bet you the police and the politicians were watching, some of them look at the CCTV images, perhaps looking out for troublemakers, looking out for where things are hotting up or whatever. Emotions are running high. Can you imagine? Would it have been any different at that time as Jesus came in? Emotions were running high. They had troubles at the past with the local people. The Romans wanted control. The Jewish leaders, they wanted control. They didn't want this prophet, this Messiah, people saw him as being, coming in and taking control. They didn't want that. They wanted to be left alone to do things the way they wanted to do. They didn't want Jesus messing things up. And so, So that's the sort of the background and so on. And Jesus comes in, and of course we know he cleanses the temple, doesn't he? There's a big picture of I'm coming to take over. You've messed things up. God has had enough of this, and we're cleansing it out. He turns over the tables of the money changers. Him and his disciples, they seem to block the whole 35-acre site of the temple. They block the entrances. Some commentators think that the evening sacrifice would have had to be cancelled. They kicked out all the money changers and those who were selling animals for sacrifice and so on, and cleared it out completely and blocked it for hours so that nothing could happen and no one could go through there. And if that had happened today, can you imagine? I want you again, use your imagination. If you've been to a big thing, say like, I'm trying to think of something like a big place where there's like almost like a worship event, and I'm thinking like perhaps you go to London, you've been to see a big show where loads of people have gone, or you've been to a football match, a large one, and thousands of people have gone, and that being stopped. Some of these things, they are almost like a place of worship. I went not long ago to a large football match in London and went to the stadium, and it was amazing. First time I'd been there, and thousands of people flocking from all over down the roads, coming, drawn to this stadium. Lights, music, sound, everything happening, people pouring in, there's food being sold, programs, t-shirts, it's all going on. Imagine someone coming in, a group of people, kicking all that out, shutting it all down, and stopping everybody from coming in and going through, and stopping the game, or if it's a theatre, stopping what was going to be happening, the play, the show, whatever it was going to be. Can you imagine what the result of that would be like? Can you imagine? The police would turn up, there would be vans of police, they'd pile out, there would be police marksmen and so on. It would be dramatic and it would be on the news. Well, something like that happened here. Jesus coming in, there was excitement, and they would have been watching. So their question comes, of course, in chapter 20, verse 1, where they say, by what authority do you do these things? What is your authority? It's almost like, how dare you? How dare you? So what does Jesus do? What's his response to this? Well, he tells a parable. Instead of answering them directly, he answers them indirectly through the parable and gives the story, and he places himself and them directly in this parable. And I want to tell you something else. The key part of the parable is not at the end, as we might think it would be. It's what's called a ring composition parable. We often think that stories start at the beginning, they work their way through, and there's a climax at the end. Well, in this one, the climax is in the middle, is in the center. It's with the owner of the vineyard. And that's why I call this the parable of the owner of the vineyard, because the key thing is what he says and what he does. So next time we will look, I promise you, directly at that and look at the owner of the vineyard. Bless you.